October hikes, paramount of which are the tariffs that has been increased by the PURC, and they announced an almost 6% increase in electricity tariffs. We know that, and many of you beginning to feel this because you're beginning to the billing cycle will hit you shortly in the middle of this month, and you have to pay this particular increase. Water as well has gone up over 2%. Now, the PURC explains a depreciation in the value of the cedi, inflation, an increase in crude oil prices, among others, were factors that they considered in giving and imposing these latest increases that we've seen. Also, according to the Commission, even before consumers could come to the terms with the increases, the Ghana Water Company says, well, the increases are simply woefully inadequate for it to begin to make the returns that they need to keep the Ghana Water Company running and producing water for you. Traders and businesses are threatening to also increase prices as a result, because, as I said, this really is what you call the October hikes. Not only have we seen the tariffs going up, we've seen a number of things also going up this particular October. We've seen, for example, the Fan milk going up, prices of the Fan yogurt, the Fandango, all those have gone up. I mean, look at some of the specifics here. Fan ice, which was formerly sold at 1 Ghana cedis, will now sell at 1 Ghana 20 pesos, whilst the price for Fan ice 250 ml goes for 5 cedis. That's not all happening in October, because including the communication service tax that also took effect yesterday, you add that with the tariffs and your favorite fan is going up and other prices will go up, because all this will have a knock-on effect, because fuel prices went up recently 2-3 weeks ago as well. Everything happening at the beginning of this month, and traders are complaining. The minority has jumped into this already and has expressed disappointment at the decision, demanding an apology from the president to Ghanaians. Nothing affects most Ghanaians more than tariffs, because you cannot avoid paying electricity bill, you cannot avoid paying water bills, and so each time it goes up, it is a big deal, as you've seen. Key question: Is this really what can bring us relief, and will it really change the concept, the scope of things that many people have considered as absolutely important when it comes to fixing the economy? We've heard the arguments that if you look at the factors that the PLC says they considered in the increases, if you look at inflation, if you look at the cedi depreciation, if you look at the fuel mix and all that, these are factors that simply has to do with the economy. The PLC doesn't run the economy, and so these factors determine the prices. They simply have to do it. But how do you justify? Is that the justification? And is that adequate? We'll hear from those affected by this, the consumers, the businesses as well, the utilities as well, and hear from the PURC as well. You want to join us as well on this, because this hits you right in the pocket. This is PM Express. Stay with us. You're live on PM Express tonight. My guest in the studio is Commissioner with the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, Ishmael Ejukumhene. Also with me tonight is Stanley Mate. He is a communications manager with the Ghana Water Company. On Skype is Nana Osei Bonsu. He's the CEO of the Private Enterprise Federation. Thank you, Nana Osei Bonsu, for your time on PMS. Thank you, Stanley and Mr. Ejukumhene, for your time on PMS as well. So, how do you justify the increases?
Okay, thanks for having me here. Technically, I would have loved for these the technical people from PURC to have come, but I need to be here to explain some of the things. In terms of justification, it's basically adjusting for changes in the assumptions that went into the determination of the tariffs in July, that took effect from July. Before one announces...
Sorry, what took effect in July?
The major tariff review that kicked in from July 1.
Okay.
The 11.7% that was announced was based on a number of assumptions, mainly the generation mix. When I talk about generation mix, the hydro-thermal combination that needs to be supplied, and then the exchange rates, inflation, fuel mix, various other things, but these are the key things that one takes into account in determining the tariffs. To understand why these factors are very, very important, especially exchange rate, you know, the electricity that you and I we use and we pay for in pesos, they are all priced in USD. So and when it comes to the cost of generation, PRC doesn't have any input into that. Most of these are all cost pass-throughs because they are based on contracts that have been signed, the power purchase agreement. So if Car Power is delivering a unit of electricity at say 11 cents, PRC can't do anything about it. So in determining the bulk generation tariff, you take that contract's rate, multiply by an exchange rate, and that gives you the generation cost. That one, you don't do anything about it. So it's the transmission service charges and the distribution service charges that PRC will vet those costs. But in terms of the generation, there's nothing that you could do about it. Unless, of course, you are able to get more hydro into the system than thermal, in which case, because hydro is slightly cheap, a lot more cheaper than thermal. So this particular window and what led to this announcement, there was a major change in a key assumption that has to do with the exchange rate. If you look at the tariff decision as written and published on PRC's website, all these assumptions are stated there. The Commission had used an exchange rate of 5.05 as the rate for determining the tariffs. At the end of the first quarter, that is the third quarter, the first quarter after the announcement, but the third quarter of the year, I'm sure you know what the exchange rate is. It's in the region of around 5.4, 5.5. Okay. What that means basically is that when the PDS, ECG, NETCO, when they collect the money and they have to go and pay these IPPs, they will need a lot more money to be able to go and pay them. Mindful of the fact that there are a number of assumptions that goes into the tariff determination, PRC way back in 2001 came up with, as part of a transition plan, came up with the automatic adjustment formula to say that every quarter take a look at your assumptions, your numbers, to see if anything has changed. And if they've changed and they've hit a trigger point, you need to introduce and do some adjustments, otherwise they'll be under recovery. So it was run till about 2006, and it was suspended and reintroduced late 2009 and 2010.
Are we back to it fully now?
We should be back to it fully. And
is this a result of the automatic adjustment? I think that's the explanation that you gave in the statement.
Yes, so it's purely, this increase is purely as a result of the
automatic adjustment. Do I hear you say the single most important factor there is the exchange rate?
Exchange rate.
Although the other factors that you mentioned, that is the most important determinant.
Is a key parameter that necessitated the increment, because as for inflation, the average inflation over the period, I mean, we had used 8, but in July it was 9.4. August was also 9. It was last month that the rebasing brought it to 7. If you do the average, we should have used probably 8.6, but we used 7.8. We maintained the 8 that we used. So inflation didn't make any impact on this adjustment. The fuel mix also hadn't changed because of the reverse flow and all. We have gas now, so the gas price remains the same. Is the HFO price mainly for AXA that saw a slight change. So those were not significant, but the main reason why the adjustment was necessary was
the exchange rate. Let me bring in Nanao Sebungsu. Mr. Sebungsu, the Private Enterprise Federation, Association of a lot of enterprises, you've seen the increases that we've just been talking about and the justification from the PULC. Your reaction?
Well, anytime you increase these pricing, obviously it's going to affect the pricing and the cost of doing business. And this is immediate. Whether you have budgeted for it, you have planned for it, or whatever, you're supposed to make sure that you pay the price that is going to be imposed or that has been imposed, and it has effect on how businesses perform. So what we're trying to tell government is, let's find a way to do some hedging on our foreign exchange so far as these utility requirements are. We can't leave ourselves bare forever. If the price goes to $10, 10 cedis a dollar, it's going to affect us. So we just sit idle and wait for that to happen before we do anything? Why can't we do the mechanisms to protect the exchange rate so far as the utility needs and all? Why haven't we employed them? So these are some of the issues that we want government to address. We have technical people, we have opportunities, we have market mechanisms that can be put in place to protect the gyration of the foreign exchange as so far as the needs of the utility companies. If we don't do that, we are just a sitting duck, always to be impacted by the foreign exchange volatility.
Stay with me. Let me bring in the Ghana Water Company. This is how many times? This is the last quarter increase, correct?
Yeah, last quarter.
Okay, so this year, how many increases have we seen if we're applying the automatic adjustment? I think 2.
Well, the July one was the major review, which is done every 2 years.
Okay.
The major tariff review.
But in the first and second, the first quarter, we didn't see an increase.
No, because the major tariff ought to have been announced in February to have taken effect.
So that's what you did in July.
In July, and there was a reason. The government has said it was renegotiating some of the power purchase agreement, gas prices, and those were the reasons why, in fact, the increment in July even stayed at 11.7 because
But 11.7 was for electricity?
For electricity.
Okay, water didn't get.
They got an.
How much? What's the percentage?
8%.
8%.
Yeah. And
so this additional 2%. So in this year you've had this just a little over 10% increase. That should be enough for you.
Now the 2.2% is almost insignificant because if you look at the record now, the difference in the billing would up to about 25,000 liters, you can only get a difference of about 3-4 cedis. And if you consume less than 20, then the difference is less than a cedi. So it's almost insignificant.
Would it help you break even at all?
Oh, not at all. I mean, if you look at the cost of production and then the tariff per cubic meter, it will be very difficult for us to break even. At the last major tariff review, our expectation was for us to get somewhere around 21, 22 cedis so that we can break even.
In percentage terms, that would be what?
Close to 100%.
Okay.
Yes, but then we had just about 6 cedis. And so there's still a gap between the tariff and then the cost of production. Now, in 2014, 2015, government came out with a policy to unlend our loans to us. So when we put everything together, the cost of production is somewhere around 21, 22 cedis. But if we get our loans off, then the cost of production
22 cedis per
cubic meter.
Okay. Oh.
And if we get our loans off, then cost of production will be around close to 13 cedis per cubic meter. But then the tariff per cubic meter given to us was around 6 cedis. So there's still a big gap. So for every cubic meter of water that we sell, or we produce and sell, we lose close to 100% and the cost.
Wow, in monetary terms?
50%.
In monetary terms, how much?
6 cedis per cubic meter.
So you're losing 6 cedis per cubic meter every
for every cubic meter
you produce right now.
Yes.
You're running at a loss.
Yes.
That's not sustainable.
And it's been so for a very long time. It's just
How long?
been as a result of some prudent management. That is why the Ghana Water Company Limited is surviving. It's not easy, but we still work hard to make sure that we serve Ghanaians very well.
No, so what you're saying is there must be a point where this magic that you're doing, we simply, you can't pull the rabbit out of the hat anymore, because from what you're saying, it can't be a sustainable approach to doing things.
My regulator is here, so.
No, I'm asking you. I mean, before it comes in, I get it. Before it comes in, I get it.
But then that's the situation, Evans. So, like I said, if
you keep on pulling these rabbits out of the hat, for how long? How many years has this been?
I mean, I'm sure since PLC was established, I don't think we've had any cost-reflective tariff. But we're working very hard so that we manage the system. So every time we are indebted to our creditors, and we just kind of robbing Peter
what is the picture
Paul.
now in terms of the debt? Unfortunately, we focus too much on power. To your neglect.
Yeah.
So help us understand. We know what the power situation is, the debt, but we don't know yours. So what is the situation for Ghana Water?
I don't have a figure now, and I wouldn't want to mention any. I wouldn't want to conjecture. So, give me some time, and I'm going to get that figure for you, because I wouldn't want to mention any figure that may not be right.
But is this sustainable the way you're running now?
It isn't, but then we have taken up the challenge to manage the water sector, and so we are doing our best. And anytime we are in distress, we get support from government. So we try to manage the situation as it is.
You're not in distress now, are you?
We are, but we can only go to government when we've gotten to that level where nothing can be done. So that is the situation.
It's certainly not a crisis now.
It's not, because you are managing well.
Mr. Jukumhini, that is a very dire picture there.
No, Evans, I have a problem with that. The problem with Ghana Water is not tariffs. It's not the tariffs we approve for them, and I'm not too sure I want to go into a lot of details.
But you have to, so that we carry us along.
What we have given to Ghana Water is
2%.
No. The 2% is only because electricity is constitutes about 40% of their cost of production. So if there's an increase in electricity, we needed to adjust their tariffs. But the total revenue requirement for Ghana Water for 2019-2020, as determined by PURC, the tariffs that have been given to Ghana Water should be able to help them recover that total revenue requirement. You go to the PURC website, you take a look at the tariff decision for 2019. Everything has been explained in there. There has always been a difference between what the utilities are asking for and what the PURC deems prudent.
Yeah, but that difference is like the heaven and earth.
No, even
day and night. He's saying 100%. You've given them 2%.
That cannot be correct.
And 8%.
Even that cannot be correct. Ask Mr. Mate, how much of the water they produce are they able to account for?
Okay.
You just ask him to tell you the figure. I'm not going to tell.
I'll come.
So please, as far as water is concerned, it's sometimes when you sit next to him and he said his commissioner is here, it makes us look irresponsible from what he's talking about. But we've had meetings upon meetings with the management of Ghana Water. These numbers that he appears to be contesting, we've discussed these numbers. They know that what they are asking for, if we are there not just to protect the interest of the utilities but also consumers, we cannot approve what they are considering. He talked about the loans that the government has asked them, have they started paying those loans?
But if you don't give them the tariff, how would they
make
money to
but
pay
we have an escrow account.
It's not every loan that you recover through tariffs. And you don't recover
How
all.
else?
No,
How else
but you don't recover all your loans in 1 year. So in the tariff that we approved for you in 2019, your loan liabilities that you have to pay is calculated and added to your total revenue.
Okay, so you're saying the 2% and the 8% previously, you calculated your loan liability?
Yes, the 2% is actually supposed to correct for the shortfalls that is going to arise, because in our estimation, they ought to have, the 8% they got ought to have been enough to recover the total revenue they need to operate. You start off by telling us how many gallons of water you're going to produce in a year, and then we determine, you tell us how much you need to be able to do that, and then we sit down with them, ask them how many times we met with them, sit down and tell them why this amount cannot be justified. Sometimes they are unable to justify their own figures when they meet with the commission. So when an announcement is made and it makes it look like somebody is, what we're doing is like telling us that we're deliberately killing Ghana Water. But I'm telling you that.
But there's not a deliberateness, but that's a fact.
No, Evans. I'm saying that, you see, when you talk about tariffs being inadequate, relative to what?
Woefully inadequate.
Relative to what?
Relative to the cost of production.
Yes, and that cannot be true. You see, you don't talk about cost of production in isolation. You put everything together, and you need a certain amount of money, okay, to deliver the quantity of water you say you're going to produce. And I'm saying that we give all the utilities, including even the power utilities, who will tell you that they are not getting enough. We determine what we consider to be prudent costs. And these are not costs that are saying that you deliberately sit down and you are cutting down costs simply because otherwise they wouldn't be able to operate. I'm saying that let anybody in Ghana Water come and show us why they think that the revenue that we approve for them is not enough for them to run.
The man is sitting here.
I'm telling you, Evans, go read the tariff decision. Let them you see what they requested and what was approved, and the reason why what they requested for was not given to them.
I mean, I'm a layperson here. I don't understand any of these technicalities. But if they request 100% and you give them 2%, that sounds like
but Evans,
you're not even meeting them.
No
at all.
You see, when you talk about the 2%, it's not as if the 2% is the tariff that was approved for them. There's a quarterly adjustment that we say that when we looked at what we approved and what they were supposed to recover, if we don't do this 2%, the revenue they needed for that quarter, there's a shortfall of 2.2%. It's not the tariff of 2.2%. Okay, the review period is supposed to be for 2 years. The tariff that was announced is supposed to be for 2 years. And we've determined the total amount of money they need for that.
The one did in July.
Pardon, the one we did in July.
Yeah.
It's for 2 years.
But that's 8%.
Yes, but 8%.
But he asked for 100.
But go check the history. Go check the history of all the utilities. That whatever proposal they bring to the PURC, it's sometimes they're asking for, sometimes they can't even quote the percentage they're asking for. NEDCO is asking for, in some cases, 150%, some 200%. But PURC, even don't forget the PURC's role. They're supposed to maintain a balance, consumer interest and utility. And they
balance the interest.
And the utility, the interest of the utilities. At the end of the day, it is not what the utilities want, or we give them what they need to be able to keep the system running.
Forgive me, let me bring it back in. Mr. Mate says that you don't have the justification to demand 100, and what you got is what you need.
You know, for every utility in the world, there's some room made for some losses. And
what's yours now?
Ours is around 42%.
What?
Non-revenue water. And
that's water you produce that you can't account for.
Yes,
it's close to 50%.
And it's mainly commercial losses.
What does that mean?
People's refusal to pay bills and all that, and then through illegal connections.
I'm sure.
Now, 42%. Before we can clear this, we need to make a lot of investment. Okay. Now we are leveraging on technology to reduce it, and that is why we are even at 42% as I speak.
It used to be what?
It used to be 53, 55%, and you know, we have very old equipment and all that. Our pipelines are quite old and all that, so there are a lot of bursts in the system anytime there are high pressures. Okay, so these are the challenges that we're facing, and we are unable to fix some of these things on time or change some of these things, these equipments, even after the expiry, because of funds. Okay, so for instance, some of our pipelines are more than 40 years old, and pipes which we changed about every 15, 20 years. We are still using them after 30, 40 years. So we do expect that we're going to get the full effect or the full benefit of those pipelines. So we are faced with a lot of challenges. Assuming we had enough funding to be changing some of these things, our losses would have been lower. Now, I think our consumers are also doing a disservice to the utility, especially with the Ghana Water Company Limited, by stealing the product. Now, if we are all patriotic citizens, if we are all responsible citizens, and we are doing what is expected of us, some of these things wouldn't occur. Okay, so as a company, we are doing our best to see how we can resolve some of these things and to reduce some of our losses. But then it becomes very difficult to invest into it because the funding is not there. So assuming we have some cost-reflective tariff, we could have invested more and we could have reduced it. Now we can also talk about the fact that the raw water sources that we use for production are highly polluted in this country.
So it's costing you more to treat it.
Exactly. Apart from the Volta River, every river body in this country is seriously polluted. Okay, even with the Volta River, now we are seeing some traces of pollution, especially because of the aquaculture ongoing on the Volta River and an entire stretch. So now we have water hyacinths growing faster as a result of the organic feeds that they use in feeding the fishes and all that. So these are challenges that we are facing. And we have had to use more chemicals in the treatment process. Now these chemicals are also not produced here in Ghana. Most of them are produced, not most of them, all of them are produced outside this country, and we need foreign exchange to procure them. So that the CD dollar exchange rate is also affecting us seriously. So it's a serious challenge. And seriously, he talked about, my boss, our commissioner talked about the loans that have been unlended to us. Yes, now we have an escrow account, and every month we have to be paying, we have to be putting money in there to clear the debt and all that. So we are working on that, you know, and these are some of the of the challenges.
Let me bring in Mr. Sebunsu. Mr. Sebunsu, do you have any sympathies for the utilities? I mean, the Ghana Water Company is complete.
Not at all. Don't even complete a sentence. Not at all. We don't. Look at the cost structure of Ghana Water. And look at revenue loss, 42%. It used to be 50, 55, he says. If you are in a business and you losing revenue of what you use monies to produce, and you lose the revenue of 42%, you shouldn't be in business. If these were not utilities that people need and they're not owned by government, they'll be out of business. We have to find prudent ways of doing business. And this, to me, is unacceptable. The PRC allowing that these guys' cost structure is so much. Let's review and vet the cost structure from A to Z. how they produce, what is constituted. He's telling us the treatment of water. The main ingredient of Ghana water is free. They may be polluted, you have to treat them. And now you're using electricity, which pricing had been increased, to justify an increase in the water utility. That is unacceptable. That is definitely unacceptable. So let's, as a country, let's sit together, find ways, go back to, I said, from a employee to the top management. Do we need all that? The equipment that they need? He says, for 40-something years, we haven't retooled. How come? We've been getting increases upon increases every year, 2 or 3 times a year. And we haven't set aside definitely resources to retool. And we don't hedge our exposure. And we sit there waiting for something to happen. Look, listen to the explanation from Mr. Is that a Jakum?
Yes.
The PUIC gentleman, commissioner. He's telling these guys, hey, wait a minute. You're not doing proper business. We shouldn't be giving you any increase at all. They came back every time. They will come back with additional requests for outrageous increases. I remember some years back, 2013, 2014, they were looking for 180-something% increases. What kind of business? A private sector business tomorrow, October 4th, they decide to increase their pricing the same percentage. What would the government of Ghana say? Irresponsibility on the part of tariffs, irresponsibility on the part of transporters, irresponsibility on the part of various businesses. So we also want government to realize that you shouldn't allow these parties to increase pricing arbitrarily. And we've been doing this over the years. And we come back, this is what, October? Come January, we'll be talking the same thing. And they'll try to justify why there should be increases.
Mr. Bonsu,
I think it's unacceptable.
Mr.
Yes,
Bonsu,
sir.
Isn't it a chicken and egg situation? He says, if you don't give me the realistic tariffs, I cannot invest in technology to improve the losses and to reduce the losses.
It's not a chicken and egg story at all, sir.
Why? Why is it not?
To me, I don't want to use term irresponsibility, because you have to justify, as Mr. Jacob said, justify your cost structure, justify your revenue base. They anticipated and made an assumption of expected revenue. And you said, we can't collect because people are stealing it. This is your business. This is the business why they're increasing the pricing for you. And you lose 42% of what it cost you to produce.
Because they have,
and you said it's a chicken.
Because they have obsolete equipment, poor infrastructure,
this
poor
is not
technology,
transmission equipment.
all that you require the money to improve.
No, sir, this is not transmission problems. These are loss of revenues. How come they don't collect? Come to a lot of these areas where people can afford to pay, and the water is not being pumped into the homes using trucks that are owned by employees of Ghana Water to collect. Let's play the music. Let's look at it. I would expect the president to appoint a commission of inquiry. Let's go into these tariff increases and the cost of production of these utilities. That will allow us to come to a conclusion that as a nation, we are inefficient. Then we all have to bear the price. But as of now, the inefficiencies in the system should not be glorified by price increases.
We have seen, this is not the only increase we've seen in the last few weeks. Petrol prices went up, transport went up, utilities have gone up, communication service tax has gone up. A private enterprise...
Except the pricing of private sector products.
And that's the question I'm coming to. Are we going to see a knock-on effect on your members increasing the price of your output, of your products that you put out?
I wouldn't jump the gun. We're seeking appointment with the economic management team to bring to bear all this impacting on businesses and the cost structure of businesses, so we can all come to some understanding and appreciate what is going on the competitiveness of the domestic private sector. Because now that we have CFTA, we'll be sitting ducks, letting others come in with overcut us on the pricing because of efficiency in their system. So we have written to the Vice President, seeking audience to bring attention to all these things that are impacting on our competitiveness. So once we get them, after that meeting, then we come to the table and let you guys know what will be the option available to the private sector, because we also have cost.
Until that time, you are not going to pass this on to us?
Well, I wouldn't say yes or no, because as individual businesses, they have authority and the right to see how they survive. So that, but collectively, we usually want to have a consensus position after talking to the duty bearers as to the relevance of how things are working. So we would appeal to our members for the time being, maybe a week or so, to stay put. Let's get together with the EMT and see the options that's available to the private sector.
Give me a sense of how all these increases are affecting businesses. How bad has it hit the businesses?
How bad? It's too bad. You see, every business needs electricity. Every business, whether you're an administrating, whether you're productive, whatever, you need electricity. So this is a direct hit of that percentage. And sometimes it's even more when the outages and you have to support with, generators and others. So this is a direct, it's not even how high do you jump or how low you go. This is a direct hit on businesses. As I say that, we need an immediate discussion at the EMT level, so at least businesses can also let them know and what kind of relief we can get out of that. On the other side of the coin, you paying taxes that had not been transferred into any meaningful returns for businesses. And now you're hit with a double blade axe by this utility tariff. So definitely there's a real danger too. And as I mentioned, the CFTA, African Continental Free Trade Agreement, will allow businesses to be invaded by competition from other jurisdictions. And if we continue to be uncompetitive and our pricings are outrageous, believe me, it goes against what? Employment. It goes against people having jobs and livelihood. So we really have to take this serious. It's not just utilities and argument whether they justify a chicken and egg situation or what. It's the point of how do we survive as a nation based upon our private sector survivability and sustainability.
Mr. Jakumhene, the apart from the PEF making the argument, I've heard arguments on the back of the increases that said that this simply, in fact, there's even a demand for the president and the MPP to apologize for the increases, and that the PULC's increases cannot be justified if you look at the inefficiencies of the utilities, both Ghana Water and ECG, and they cite some of the factors. Yeah, you've talked about inflation, but if you've talked about the exchange rate, they say inflation is 7% there, about single digit. They say, well, the economy, the government says they run the economy so well, so if there is anything, there should be a reduction, not an increase. It comes back to what extent was the cost of living considered, impact on this on ordinary Ghanaians considered in the adjustments?
Okay, so even I don't speak for government, probably.
But in terms of PRC consideration, do you think businesses like the PEF, how will this affect them? Was that part of the consideration?
Evans, this commission that I'm part of since 2017 is the first commission in this country that ever reduced tariffs. Very significant. As a matter of fact, as we speak right now, with all these adjustments, upward adjustment, we are still not even up to the 2016 levels. Go check. All these figures are on the PURC website. There's so much commitment at the PURC and the sense we get from government that let's try and bring tariffs down. Look, we were told that the decision to reduce tariffs was a populist decision. Look, go read the 2018 tariff decision. There's so much determination to bring electricity tariffs down. In February, when PURC was ready to announce its tariffs, there was a circular from PURC, a release saying that government said they are renegotiating some power purchases. Why is government doing that? Because it's very, very important that tariffs are kept at competitive levels for businesses. We are in a country where we don't have jobs. Industry got as high as 30%, 25% in 2018. So that was in the mind of the PURC, promote economic development, make our industries competitive. People were actually switching over from the grid because it was cheaper for them to run their gensets. People are still doing that today. The hotels, sometimes at a certain consumption, they're switching over. That was part of the reason why the PURC.
My switch personally was stop using Ghana water.
Okay.
Because the cost simply went skyrocketed. So I dug my own mechanized borehole in my house. And got off the water grid.
So exactly the point that the reason why tariffs had to come down. But once tariffs was reduced or were reduced out to that level, that became the baseline. Okay. In 2018, when the tariffs decision was announced, the exchange rate that was used in the computation was 4.43. That was the basis that led to that tariff that was announced. There's no way tariffs can remain where they are if the exchange rate today is 5.43. Okay.
That's a significant movement.
Exactly.
But isn't that why he needs more?
I will come to Ghana. Let me focus on electricity. I'll come to Ghana water. And I know why I'm doing that.
No problem.
Okay, Evans. There is a narrative that I'm not too sure Ghanaians are fully plugged in.
What is that?
This 3 months that an adjustment has been necessitated, the revenue shortfalls that the utilities need to plug back is close to about 80 million cedis for
both utilities?
No,
or just electricity?
For electricity side.
Okay.
About 80 million cedis. This sector, energy sector, is saddled with excess capacity, idle capacity that we didn't even factor into this whole equation. If the adjustment is not made, government will have to find that money. Otherwise, it goes to add to the legacy debt. Meanwhile, close to about 1 billion cedis or $1 billion in terms of excess capacity is supposed to be paid directly. I don't know how the government is going to do that. So the energy sector is in crisis. If anybody tells you that there is room for maneuvering and that this adjustment, and there's no justification, sometimes it amazes me when some of the issues that are being, the accusations and allegations are coming from members of parliament, people who have been energy ministers before, saying that there's no justification for this, when the analysis is there for them to read, when they would have met PURC. PURC has taken them through, they couldn't ask a simple question.
Based on what you said, isn't there even a case for far more higher increases than what you currently
I'm telling you,
at least for electricity?
Yes, if those idle capacity had been plugged into the equation, we would have run away from this country. Who is going to pay for that? Meanwhile, these are contractual obligations that somebody has to pay for that. Okay, that is not part of what we are talking about here. And if we allow these small adjustments to go on, to fester, we have to look for more money to be able to do it. It's got nothing to do with inefficiencies. I'm telling you, sometimes just the macroeconomy that is making this thing look like this. If we don't correct this, I can guarantee you that it's going to add to the legacy debt that you and I are still paying that indirectly through the ESLA. We can't afford to be adding to it. I'm not here to justify anything. Mind you, I'm also a consumer. I pay my utilities. But if you look at the numbers, if you look at what's going on, and if you have been asked to be the regulator and you don't do anything about it, you'll be deemed to be.
Stanley, the picture he paints about the power situation unfortunately affects you quite extensively.
Exactly.
Because one of the most important lines in the things you use for the production is electricity.
And he himself, he said so.
I mean, because so if the power prices go up, you get a hit quite significantly. He admits it's a big problem, but there's no sympathy for you out there as far as businesses are concerned. You had the PEF, leaders make the point that with that level of losses, you shouldn't even be giving anything at all. That you should find a way to reduce that, find an ingenious ways of making your own revenue, and then maybe you can for justification.
Evans, I admit to that, but we can only do that if we invest into the system.
So, but that's a point, right? So
But
your
there's
point
no
is
point to invest
invest
into the
first
system.
and let's improve.
And
But the argument out there is that improve and then we'll invest in you.
Yes, but apart from the investment, I also made mention of the fact that if Ghanaians would change our attitudes, if Ghanaians will be responsible enough and be patriotic citizens, this can also change. But people are stealing the product water. Okay? And it's affecting us.
You know,
and
when
when
the ECG had that problem in the past, and what did they do? They introduced technology to fix it.
Yes, we are also investing to technology.
So but it's been slow.
It's not. You know, ECG is or the energy sector is quite different from the water sector.
True.
You know, playing with pipes and stuff is not as dangerous as power.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people who are scared if you have to play with power. Besides, power is we have the lines hanging around. So if you joke with it or if you attempt to do anything, people might see you. Now ours is buried, so people wake up late in the night and then they just do whatever they have to do, and then they cover it up. So it becomes very, very, very difficult. You understand? That is why I am even advocating for attitudinal change. After all, water is not expensive. And I've told you that 2.2% that has been given us now is almost insignificant. You understand? So water is not expensive at all. So why don't we just pay so that the utilities can survive? You understand? And so I'm not, for us, yes, we need to do a lot more. And we are doing everything possible. That is why we have even introduced technology into our billing and our payment. You know, now we are working on an e-project where our billing system, our payment system can all be done electronically, so that at least we are a bit closer to the customer, and we are making it easier for you to pay.
The masters connections you used to do, is this something that you used to do?
Yeah, now we have had to go on the ground and to be knocking at people's door to pay their bills. I mean, for the past 1 month, we've been doing revenue mobilization. We've been on the field. I've been to Western, last week I was in Western, Central, Volta, Eastern, moving from house to house to collect bills, because we need to invest into the system. Why should we wait? Why should you consume the water and then you wait for staff of GWCL to come and harass you in court for you to pay your bills? It shouldn't happen. That is why I'm advocating for attitudinal change. Okay, now you can sit in the comfort of your homes and pay via mobile money. So why should you have to wait for us to come and disconnect you? You understand? And so we are investing to all this technology so it will be easier for people to pay. Now, if you are not paying because you think it's you do not maybe have time, or you think it's difficult for you to go around or go and queue somewhere to pay and all that, you can pay now in the comfort of your home at any time T. You can sit anywhere in this world and pay your bills in Ghana, in Accra here. So why should it be difficult for people to pay?
I'm going to take a quick break. When I return, I would ask the commissioner from PULC. So this is the fourth quarter increase. Are we going to see any further increases going forward into next year? But also the business, the PEF, I'd asked that the PULC stop increasing and rather sanction with the amount, the quantum of inefficiency and losses in the system for the utilities. Is the PULC considering that? Stay with us here on PM Express. On PM Express tonight, still with me, the Ishmael Ejekumhin is the commissioner with the PULC. Stanley Mate is the comms manager with the Ghana Water Company. And we also have with us on Skype Mr. Bontu, who is the head of the PEF, the Private Enterprise Foundation. Mr. Ejekumhin, you heard PEF make the point that, and this is the argument that we've had in the past, that with the level of inefficiency and the losses both for power and for water, the PULC should be sanctioning in addition to using tariff as a punitive measure. Is this something that the PULC is going to consider going forward?
PULC sanctions by saying that there's a regulatory benchmark. So, for example, the inefficiencies, for the past couple of years, it was 21% for power. So if you don't do 21%, PULC doesn't allow you, so that in itself, it's a sanction. So if you do 25%, you are only allowed to recover 21% as a result of the benchmark in there. So there are sanctions in there, but it is in their own interest, the utilities' own interest, to then do the things that will bring the cost down. But the tricky bit is this: there's a direct relationship between the investments that need to be made and your ability to bring your losses down. I mean, I know PDS, unfortunately PDS has its own story, but PDS we're going to be committed to reducing the losses by a certain magnitude every year for the next 5 years.
Are they on track?
Oh, there's no investment has been made by PDS so far, because they were supposed to invest over the period about 580 or so million over the 5-year period. That was supposed to reduce the total system losses to about 5% or something like that, 500 million US dollars. So there's a direct relationship. So PURC has set those benchmarks. And because we know the utilities problem, and here is a shareholder, which is the government, who is supposed to make those investments, it's not every problem that can be fixed with tariffs. So even if you were to invest that amount, the PURC will only allow the repayment of your loans, your equity or your debt in the tariff, and that will be recovered within that year. The rest, you have to spread it over the years. We will have to make sure that you amortize those loans. So yes, we have a way in which we check these losses. I mean, Ghana Water knows that they are non-revenue water. There's a benchmark.
In the 2% is a punitive. It's in there.
It's in there.
An acknowledgement of
because
that.
If they are doing more than the non-revenue water, the approved one, it goes against them, and they can't recover. They are not recovering that from.
But how do you address this concern that if that continues, it cripples the ability to get enough revenue to fix? Because part of the problem is also reinvesting revenue into it. There's a cycle. You
see, when you say
that this might create
enough revenue, I want them to convince me that if we are giving them, let's say, 2 billion cedis in 2019, that's not enough to cover their cost for 2019.
So in other words, how much do you need to fix a problem?
Yes, they know.
How much do you need to fix a problem?
Oh no, for massive infrastructure, it is not a tariff issue.
Yeah. I know, but this is a general question. You have a problem, you want to reduce losses, etc., which is investment. How much would you need to fix that?
Oh, to give a definite figure now will be a bit difficult.
But you should know that, man, because that's...
it keeps changing,
okay.
You know.
And the last
it's multifaceted. So there's several things that we need to put together, and because of the dynamics in the system, it becomes a bit difficult to just mention it once and then that's it. Okay. Because one, we also have a vision to have 100% access to water by 2025, and even the SDGs. Yes, we are on track, but we need to do more investment.
Okay.
The SDGs itself is 2030, but we have been ambitious to say 2025, and we are working towards it. And we need to invest into infrastructure, okay. And we need to reduce our losses. And seriously, like he said, if we are able to reduce our losses, it's in yours to our.
You should.
And that is why we are working towards it, and that's why we are investing into it. But then. You do the investments, and other areas are also we also cripple other areas and all that.
Let me quickly get a final word to Mr. Bonsu. Mr. Bonsu, have you had enough from the PURC and the Ghana Water Company to convince you that there is a commitment, one, to check these inefficiencies in a way that you obviously have complained about?
I'm very disappointed, rather. If the gentleman from the Ghana Water cannot even tell us their liabilities and their cost recovery, it costs you X to produce Y, and you lose 42% of that, and you can't tell us how you're going to recover. And the gentleman from PURC is saying that you should not be recovering all these things in 1 year. So even if we give you 20 billion, you still wouldn't invest in infrastructure because your losses are so high. Your income stream is 42% beyond projected cost structure. So why are we doing this? And if it was a private sector business, where do you think they're going to go? They wouldn't have PURC to adjust pricing for them. They will have to go to the market. The market will penalize them. So let's, as a nation, do something, because the way we're going, we're not going to be doing right by us.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Mr. Jekung said something about inefficiencies. Yes, it's ingrained in the system. let's work on this as a country because we need to. This is not politics. Let's not play politics with it because utilities, as they all said, everybody needs it.
Yeah.
And if as a country, and I'm telling how it's going to affect Ghana's competitiveness and our revenue base going forward.
Nana Sebuntu is the CEO of the Private Enterprise Federation. Ishmael Jukumhini is a commissioner with the PULC, and Stanley Mate is a comms manager with the Ghana Water Company. I'm sure you're feeling it already, or you might be when the billing cycle kicks in the middle of the month. When you do, remember that that money is needed to fix the problem in the system. Enjoy the rest of your evening.